The Orange County Forum is a nonprofit organization. Your contributions are tax deductible.
I told Emil that I'd be moderating him and Larry. He said, well, if you've ever heard Larry and I speak together, you're not going to be moderating, you're going to be interrupting. So I think we're going to have some fun today.
You know, before you don't get a chance to talk. Okay?
What did I tell you?
Yeah. So one of the reasons why Emil is so successful is this idea of disruption. We're both in an industry where our consumers are constantly changing, evolving, innovating, whether it's technological improvements or the world's always changing. And yet our industry is almost totally, for the last 5,000 years, a family business. Most of the great public companies, say the big public companies, started out like Lennar as a family business. Leonard Miller started a company, and his son Stuart Miller runs it today. Hovnanian, on and on. Lion Homes, who's here. Well, family businesses, generation after generation, have one thing in common if you're not careful. They don't want to change. Change scares them. They want to do it like dad or grandfather did it. So what Emil spends a lot of his time doing is shaking stuff up. And ideally, that's what, we named this crazy name New Home Company for a reason. Not because we were brand new, but we wanted a company that always was having new ideas. And I do think it's a big challenge because we all live in a world of disruption. And when there's uncertainty, people don't always want to make the biggest investment of their lives. Okay? And so it's kind of, and a lot of things that we do, success or lack of success, we have no control over. Emil tells a pretty interesting story. They were going public and they weren't sure what the impact of the French election was going to have on what they did. I never realized in my life, when we went public in 2014, that Greeks not paying taxes would impact me. When I'm pretty sure is anybody Greek here? Okay, Greeks have never paid taxes, okay? Anyways, your turn.
Thank you. So Larry, you've been through your share of cycles over the years. Right now, the building industry is doing pretty well. Homes are selling, and markets look pretty strong. How is it in your business right now, and what do you expect? How long should we expect this to last?
Well, that's always the big question. I was a history teacher before I got into home building, and I really have studied, we're in a business that has peaks and valleys. There are recessions and recoveries, and clearly we're in a recovery. But it's interesting because I think Bryan said I've been successful for 30 years. Unfortunately, I've been in home building for about 35. So there's probably about 5 of those years where I was really shitty, and
we accounted for that.
Okay. But this is the oddest recovery I've ever been in, and I've for a lot of reasons. In the early 2000s, when we were growing a company called John Lang Homes, anything we had in the ground was successful. Any project, anywhere. In this recovery, if we make mistakes, if we bust our budgets, if we don't have perfect homes for the market, we are not as successful. So I would probably say 15 to 20% of our projects are not doing as well as I would like, even though we're in a recovery. The second thing I think that happened in this recovery, which Emil's happy about, but I'm not, is that land prices in the recession never went as low as they had in the past. The banks didn't foreclose on people. Land today is at an all-time high and getting higher. And because of that, there is well, that's one factor at least in this whole concept of affordability or lack of it. You know, we live in this beautiful place that we love, and yet it's probably one of the least affordable places to live in the world. And so, you know, Emil and I have children who, on their own, would have a very difficult time buying their first home here. And there's something wrong with that picture. So, you know, but I would say this, and it makes me positive about things. This is a recovery where the building community has not overbuilt. And so what do I mean by that? In every other recovery that I've been in, home builders have overbuilt the market. Inland Empire, in a good year, used to do 30 to 40,000 new home sales. They're at 15, maybe 18. Phoenix would get up as much as 60,000 new home sales. They're at 18. Land is constrained. There are very few great parks. And the great parks, the Irvine companies, the Rancho Mission Viejos, are being pretty cautious about market segmentation and making sure that their builders are successful. So builders in up markets tend to overbuild and create a bubble, and I don't think that's occurred. I think there's still an undersupply, and so I believe we have quite a bit of runway to go yet.
Well, Larry has been through at least 3 more cycles than I have because he's a little bit older, but so he has more information on cycles. But I'm not smart enough to predict cycles. I've never been a market timer, and you'll never see me that, because every time we've seen the cycle turn, it was because of a reason that none of us thought about. And I assume when you talk about it, you talk about the national cycle, which, you know, this is not an industry. That's a national industry. We live in micro markets, and every market is going to behave based on its own fundamentals. There are cycles going on as we speak in places like Texas with oil prices going down. Back in the dot-com bust, San Francisco went through its own cycle, what the rest of the country didn't. So we don't pay a lot of attention, honestly, to that, just because our markets are not, secondary and tertiary markets where we have to start looking at over supply-demand balances. We protect ourselves as a company by having a balance sheet that allows us to hit on the accelerator or the brake at any moment in time. And then that's what I've learned in my business, is that the only way you can protect yourself is having the right balance sheet. Because you get in trouble when the market shifts if your balance sheet is upside down. In our
Emil,
market,
explain to people, because you're right, totally, but what do you mean by that?
well, I mean, look, it's not any different than personal situation. If you end up losing your job and you have a lot of debt, you're going to be forced to do something that you don't want to do, which is like a bankruptcy or things like that. But if you lose your job and you have a couple of bucks in the bank and your savings, and you lose your job, you can weather that storm probably much better. Same thing with companies. We have no debt. We have cash on the balance sheet. We have assets that we believe are very well-positioned assets. And if the cycle were to turn tomorrow, we can sit there and wait until the cycle comes back before we either become subject to a foreclosure to a bank or have to fire sale any land. I mean, that's really the position we put the company in, and that's what I mean. In terms of our markets, at least, look, our markets are very unique because they're primary markets, high demand, and more importantly, almost no supply. I mean, when you look at San Francisco, I think we control about 80% of the available land for development in San Francisco. When you have an imbalance today of almost 8 jobs being created to a permit, you look at it and say, okay, well, that's supply imbalance. It's going to drive prices up. But even if there's a softening in the job creation, we still have 4 to 1. Same thing in LA. I mean, with New Hall, we control a huge amount of the supply in LA, probably at the same amount. And in Orange County, as Larry said, is very unique because land is controlled by 3 entities. and none of us are in a rush to liquidate land. So we're not disrupting the price structure of land or homes. So, the cycle will turn. There's going to be an event. I mean, we decided to do something with North Korea, and we're going to be talking about a totally different economy. But again, as a company, we don't pay a lot of, honestly, attention to a lot of the analysis and the noise. We focus on what's happening in our markets, and as I said, we focus on our balance sheet.
Larry talked about affordability, and it was mentioned in the opening of the program. The term housing crisis is gaining a lot of steam, even among governments at the state level and local level. The legislature this year, there was about 130 bills that were introduced on housing. Most of those probably would do damage or do harm. But is there anything in particular that you think government, either at the state or local level, even the federal level for that matter, can do to help with the affordability crisis?
Well, there's a lot they could do. Typically, what has happened in Southern California, at least, is that, and LA's going through it right now, it has a horrible homeless problem. A shame on everyone that people live in the streets and have nowhere to go. But, a solution for that isn't just taxing new projects. I know Mike Ruane somewhere. Where's Mike? I'm hiding over here. Okay. So, Mike really ran the county planning for a long time and did a great job. I served 8 years as an Orange County Housing Commissioner, and the role was within the County of Orange to oversee all subsidized housing that the county did. And it was primarily rent subsidies. That's almost what it was. And every month we would meet, and as part of that, every month a city had to come and say what they were doing for affordable housing, every month. And month in and month out, anywhere you live, and I can't remember, I think that's 32 or 33 jurisdictions, something like that. Every month, with very, very few exceptions, the most junior planner in the city would be there and would say, I don't really know very much about what we're doing. I'm new, but we're trying to help senior citizens paint their house. Cities in Orange County don't want affordable housing. If they did, they would do something about it. They don't want poor families living in their city. If they did, they'd do something about it. So, I think it's a big problem in our county. I really do. It doesn't really impact our average sales price. We're the highest priced publicly held production home builder in the United States. Last year, our average sale price was $2 million. Okay, I'm not impacted by that. We're going down. This year will be $1.5 million. So it's not in my deal, but as a human being, you want people to be able to afford homes. You want your children to live here. You want people who don't make $200,000 a year to be able to afford a home. I don't see very many cities really saying that matters to them.
Yeah, first of all, you asked about the federal government. I think none of us are expecting much out of that government right now with their action to get to focus on housing. And even they do, it doesn't...
Well, Ben Carson is the head of HUD. What's he know about housing? Seriously. Guy's a surgeon. Maybe.
Honestly, this could easily turn into a usual let's complain about government session, which we don't want to do that because I've actually given up. I honestly don't expect anything out of government. It's very frustrating, but it is what it is. And I can start with my friends in Irvine to up there because I'm usually very vocal about that. There's a big disconnect when you have elected officials who are looking at the world through a lens of 2 years. And how am I going to get elected? And land use has never elected somebody.
Right.
But land use has taken people out of office.
Yeah, that's
so, true. Honestly, we have a an environment today on the public side that really doesn't care.
Wait.
And I will be willing to challenge
care.
anybody who.
Wait, you
not
care.
take public side.
Okay.
Not public trading side.
Yeah,
public
you
side.
care.
But and I'm willing to have any public official sit here from state to here to debate me on this point. But they don't care. So for us, I look at it as we have to deal with it ourselves. We are working on a lot of product that combines with lifestyle that starts hitting price points, because you can't go to a price point. You can't go to an attached product and attract people to it unless you give a lifestyle around that product. You just simply build 40 to an acre in the middle of nowhere and expect that people are going to go there. But if you build the lifestyle, for instance, you're seeing us build at the Great Park, and then you start actually saying to somebody, come live in a 700-800 square foot unit, hit the affordability, but you can take your elevator down and you're in this great lifestyle that mimics a city, you can start doing that. So we spend a lot of time on trying to do that. The biggest issue that we're going to have, and today you're hearing a lot about housing crisis, and this is something that I'm spending a lot of time in wearing my other hats, whether at USC, Lusk Center Chair, or anything else. Cities are going to have a challenge attracting companies, because this is not about housing anymore. This is about business. Every company today is trying to attract young generation to come work for it. And the best example you see today is you go to the Silicon Valley, you have tech companies that are not being able to attract people to come work in Silicon Valley because they want to work in San Francisco and live in San Francisco. So when you look at the fact that you can't hit affordability and give this young generation the lifestyle they're looking for, you're not going to then attract a company that wants to hire those people to come into your city. And you're going to find yourself as a city living in the old economy rather than the new economy. And this is what worries me the most about where we are right now, is everybody's looking at it like this, like it's an immediate crisis. It's a long-term problem where you look at today at the electoral map that we saw. It's an old economy in the middle of the country and a new economy on the other sides. And if we, in places like here, don't start thinking about how do we start attracting new economy here, we're going to find ourselves like the middle of the country one day. And that actually is where affordability is an issue for me, more than whether you can provide an affordable housing. Right. And that's really, I think, the serious issue that people are not talking about.
And if I might, less than a month ago, Emil and I had a very long conversation about, between us, building homes that could sell, attached homes, $300,000, maybe even less, in the Great Park. So, and still be able to do the economics that works for both sides. Builders haven't been very creative, really. No. I have a responsibility too, that I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm free on this deal. But I mean, I believe over the next year or two, we will do something together. Because he's got the right heart, and it's good business too. It's not an either or thing.
No. Well, look, to that point, unless the builders start thinking about building the home differently than how we've built it for the last 250 years, with the same nail and the same hammer, and start creating efficiency over there, we're not going to get there. And that's, I think, where the industry is always on a treadmill. So for people who are not familiar with Newhall, if people know where the city of Valencia is, next to Magic Mountain, we're the developer of that city, and Newhall Ranch is the continuation of that. It got approved by the Board of Supervisors 14 years ago, and we've had now 31 lawsuits on it. We went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court took it on two issues. One was requesting us to do more analysis of greenhouse gas emission, which the ruling came on the same day that Governor Brown and President Obama were in Paris at the greenhouse gas emission international conference, where the governor announced the new standards. So they wanted us to go do more analysis, and then we had an issue of an endangered fish that, there was a bridge that was encroaching on it. That was the easy one. So we looked at that as an opportunity rather than a challenge, and we sat down and challenged ourselves to see if we can do something that has not been done before. And we were able to come up with a plan to build 21,500 homes and 11.5 million square feet of commercial with having zero greenhouse gas emission. It's a very interesting plan. You can't, the technology doesn't allow you to do it on site. It doesn't available, so we had to do a lot of things off-site, including methane capture programs and dairy farms. But we had to go to Zambia and replace cooking stoves over there that are a big problem for mothers and children as well, to meet that zero. We went back and we viewed this as much as the industry was sort of looking at us as maybe we set the bar too high. But you know, the way we look at the world is change is going to happen. You're either going to acknowledge it and be ahead of it, or you're going to resist it and fall behind. And we as a company always look and say, the world is heading in that direction, notwithstanding the noise out of Washington right now. And we wanted to be on the cutting edge of that and set the standard. You know, the good news is the environmental community is split. Out of, I think, 6 groups that sued us, only 1 sued us now, and the other 5 didn't. So, you know, you start actually segregating those who are using it for a different purpose than those who are really clear about it. But that's really what we're doing. And again, I mean, that you have to realize where the world is heading and be with it. And as an industry, I think we haven't done a good job there. We're always fighting change. And we need to change.
Another big topic of discussion in a lot of different circles is the conversation about millennials and future generations. Frankly, as a Gen Xer, I find the whole thing very irritating. But how do you factor the needs and trends of generational differences into your business planning?
Well, we do that every day. I mean, the basic concept behind what we do as a home builder is, for every piece of ground that we're going to build on, we try to do some very, very basic things. First is try to understand who our buyers are going to be. What do they want? What do they dream about? What can we provide them? How do we work with the planners and the architects and the landscape architects to create something no one else has ever had for these people, whatever group it is. Empty nesters down to entry level. So we do that every single time. Every place, every time. We're not always right, but we are always trying to listen and hear. And millennials are, in many ways, no different than anyone else. Have they taken longer to launch? Sure. Okay? Since I have 2 of them, I'm an expert on that, like we all are. Anybody, but you know, my thought on this is millennials. Look, I have a lot of positive things about millennials, and I'm looking at the millennials, and I have a lot of negative things about millennials. I'll do the negative first, just to get it out of the way. There have never been a more self-indulgent, selfie-taking, me first, I'm coming back home and living with my parents group in the history of the history of the world. The day I got out of college was the last day I lived in my house. Nobody was begging me to come home, and I don't think they wanted me to come home, all right? It was the last day my parents gave me $1, and I never expected them to give me any more. That's not the world we live in. What's the good side? Well, this generation is the smartest, most tech-savvy, most well-traveled, most environmentally conscious group of people. They don't, ready, drink and drive, okay? How about that? They see the world in a colorblind fashion. You know, I didn't grow up like that in either of those situations. That was not how I was raised. I've got, like, despite the selfie-taking, me first, changed jobs 17 times in my first 3 years of work, besides all that, okay, I love where they are and the potential that this generation has to change the world. And I think one of the challenges as a home builder is and I say this so much, I've been saying it for 30 years, and it's still true. Our industry is filled and run by companies with old white guys, okay? The architecture firms are old white guys. The market research company are old white guys. Well, that is not millennials, okay? It's not, we need more diversity, we need more women running things, running everything, okay? Everything.
I see Joan agreeing over there.
Yeah, not just Mission Viejo, okay? So, but I really do believe that millennials want housing too, but they've been slower because for a lot of reasons, but one is that they are slower to get married, they're slower. When people start having families, apartments aren't so hot, okay? They're gonna wanna live in places too, but it's up to Emil and I to provide housing that attracts them, and neighborhoods, and you know, it's more than just a house, it's a whole community.
Well, so two things now. We know he's not going to build in Beaumont anymore and Hammett. If we keep on going, he's moving somewhere, I don't know where.
I have never built in either of those places, I'm still not.
Never is too long. Let me tell you, first of all, I think we have to realize that the last depression delayed a lot of the move downs because a lot of people were upside down on their homes and they couldn't actually move out of their home until the value came up and they at least broke even on an equity basis. That's happening right now. We're starting to move it. We're seeing it. You know the Parasol product that we're building. I mean, that was meant to actually hit every one of these segments. It's a 3-story rooftop entertainment with an elevator. Because one of the challenges is a lot of people who want to move down, they wanted this single story. Well, you can't build a single story and make it affordable in Orange County because of the price of land. But you can actually build a 3-story, give them a rooftop entertainment area on top for a wine party with their buddies, and put an elevator in, which today is feasible. So we are focusing a lot on that segment because I think you're going to start seeing more and more move downs, that are going to provide. Now, I don't know if somebody who's moving from an expensive home, single family, to Parasol is going to provide an opportunity for a young generation to buy that home. But that's going to be the interesting thing to see. Well, it's probably somebody coming from China will buy that home, and that's how it's going to work.
Well, we've got a lot covered today, and as usual, it's entertaining. And we thank these guys. These two leaders clearly are trying to solve problems in our community, and I think that's the biggest takeaway for me today. Please help me give a round of applause to our panelists.
Thank you.
The Orange County Forum is brought to you through the generous support of the Orange County Register and our sustaining partners. For more information about the Orange County Forum, call 949-588-9884. The Orange County Forum is a non-profit organization. Your contributions are tax deductible.